Hello and welcome to another episode of FC PopCorn. Today we have a very cool episode for you guys. We have one of FC's coolest, smartest, most badass writers, Vishal Menon, to talk about all things Malayalam cinema. Vishal, welcome to our coffee couch.
Hey Suchin, what's up?
We are going to talk about all things Malayalam cinema today because we have you. And I think the reason we need to talk about this, apart from just like get your thoughts on the industry and give a couple of recommendations for newcomers to Malayalam cinema, is one thing I've noticed in the last few years, which is why I think this conversation is important, is ever since non-Malayalis have become obsessed with Malayalam cinema, like because of OTT and stuff, there's been the rise of the non-Malayali fanboy who thinks because he's watched 6 movies in 2 years, he's an expert.
Yeah.
And like as if like there's nothing else. He's seen 5 Fahad films and like he's an expert and like we need to bust the myths. So firstly, does that annoy you when you have someone who's like, you've met someone who's like watched 6 films and he's like mansplaining Malayalam cinema to you?
I mean, it's a nice thing, right? I don't want to come across as that when I go to like Hindi film critics and start talking about like Shah Rukh films or something like that. But then I think it's a nice thing, and they're always so like they know that they've only seen the films that started like 10 years ago.
Do they? Because some of them like seem like full arrogance, no?
The thing is, if what you're saying is true, this is pretty much exactly how I used to think about those kind of guys. But then I remember like a couple of people who messaged me on Twitter. They've never lived in Kerala.
Yeah.
They discovered Malayalam films in maybe 2015, 2016. But they've gone back and they've seen every classic in the 80s and 70s and all that. And they've done that and they figured out how to watch them with subtitles. They figured out who to watch it with in case they find a print without subtitles. So the second I met like 2 guys like that, then I can't, because fundamentally you can't compete with people's pace at which they're watching stuff. Because there are people like who watch Korean dramas, like they've just watched everything, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, 5 years ago, where were these people? So the same way for them, it might be a temporary thing, but people's ability to go and just study and watch the fuck out of Malayalam cinema amazes me.
But that's insane, because those are people who are really putting their money where their mouth is. They're actually not just watching 5 films, but they're really doing the work, going back in time and things like that. It's very cool.
Yeah, but the other side also, like you see, people like exactly like how you describe on Twitter, they'll go and say, "Oh, Premam is the greatest Malayalam romance of all time," and I'm like, bro, you sat and watched all those movies from the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s.
That means he's only watched Premam.
He's only watched Premam and probably like one more, So all time, all time. Nothing is all time. None of us can ever say all time about any movie, So that annoys me, yeah, for sure.
It's the overconfidence of film Twitter.
Yeah.
No, so the first thing I wanted to ask you, because again, you have an insane amount of knowledge about so many industries, including Hindi cinema. And Malayalam cinema, it's sort of the way people refer to it, most commonly, at least last few years, is, some of the best movies coming out of the country, best, mainstream cinema, how rooted it is, how specific the stories are, how the kinds of stories that are being told there are being told nowhere else.
Yeah.
So how would you describe each of the 4 South industries and like how do you differentiate them in terms of like what are you getting from a Telugu cinema, what are you getting from a Tamil cinema?
Generally the joke, especially in like a Malayalam industry, when you're trying to make a mass movie, right? So there's this word that big directors use. It's called dosage. So there's a Malayalam film that starts at maybe 20-30. You add about 10-20 more, it becomes like a Tamil film. Then you add 30-40 about that. Then success and failure of a mass movie is pretty much based on balancing dosage with story.
So on the dosage spectrum, you're saying that first Malayalam cinema, then you add...
Lowest is Malayalam.
Lowest, and then you add 10 to 20, you get to Tamil cinema.
Yeah.
And then you add like 200 and you get to Telugu cinema.
30, 60, 80, 90.
And where does Kannada come in?
I mean, Kannada cinema, like...
They're having a bit of an interesting moment right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you talk about KGF is... pretty much like 80, 90, right?
Yeah,
that's the grandest mass movie. In fact, KGF is a better, not better, but it's a bigger mass movie than Bahubali and RRR.
Yeah.
Because that's more like they're more like story oriented and all those kinds of things. But KGF is that
just
classic,
pure mass in the DNA.
Yeah, elevation, right? And a small issue in the middle somewhere. Yeah. So it's like, it's epic and impossible to make in Malayalam. I feel a
Yeah.
movie like KGF.
I was actually going to ask you this later, but you brought it up, the idea of the Malayalam mass movie.
Yeah.
And it's something that Prithviraj talked about on, the roundtable with Anu, where he said that that's the, that in the time of pan-India buzzwords and that big, massive, so everyone's trying to find their Bahubali in KGF. Malayalam cinema hasn't found that. And he was saying that he really wants to get there. So I guess the question was, why do you think that hasn't happened yet? And is it even a good thing to aspire to? Because it feels very different to like the DNA of a Malayalam movie to go sort of big swag, pan-India global domination.
See, I don't really know if that's true because Minnal Murli is a pan-India film, I guess.
True.
Maybe you because it doesn't come with those kind of numbers, it doesn't really stick, right? Because even for people, you need a number to establish the pan-Indianness.
Yeah.
And for Minnal Murli, those numbers were like, oh, it's number 7 in Brazil today. So those are a little vague, right?
Yeah,
like it doesn't apply to like a regular person.
Yeah.
But Minnal Murli is in my head like that perfect pan-India movie that came out of Malayalam, it is as Malayalam as it could have gotten, and it's also as international it could have been.
So that's like pan-India in spirit, which makes sense. But I guess what Prithviraj was talking about was more about commercials, about like sorry, the Malayalam blockbuster that sweeps the country, that whole thing. And so is that, and even, I mean, I've only been watching Malayalam films for the last 5-6 years, but that's also, in my experience, one thing I've seen, that there is that when you're looking for a mass movie, you go to Telugu, Tamil cinema.
Yeah.
That, I mean, there is things like Lucifer, which I love.
Yeah.
But again, that's still, it's not on that scale. So the
Yeah.
big, massively mounted Malayalam film, is that something that, like, how come that's something that they haven't tried yet or they haven't done successfully yet?
No, because eventually, right, for every Malayali watches Tamil cinema. I mean, I'm generalizing, but then almost every Malayali watches Tamil cinema, and almost every Malayali watches those tentpole Telugu films. So I think it's a part of our system to think, okay, we have those movies from there anyway.
Yeah.
So why should we do that?
Like, stick to your strengths.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same way that, like, if Bollywood is making a superhero film,
for
a big audience, chunk of the audience, they're going to get that from Marvel anyway. Why do I want that from you?
Yeah, exactly. So then, because you always have that option, and there's no question of how or why. We will definitely go watch those movies as well.
Yeah.
So why are we trying to even compete with them in terms of budget? Because this is what we used to do in the 2000s and all that, when there was this period where Mammootty and Mohanlal, they're mega stars, right? And then the distance between both of them and the second or third superstar was so big that these guys were, I mean, constantly making those mega mass films. The biggest movies Malayalam cinema could afford at that time. Mohanlal had those super powerful hero characters, and that same thing was happening with Mammootty on the side. Yeah, because in 2000 or 2001, there's a movie called Narasimham that just came and that became the biggest hit ever.
Yeah.
It's the first movie in Malayalam to make more than 10 crores or 15 crores or something like that. And then it just led to like a series of films being made in that same pattern.
Yeah.
And in all those films, there's another Mammootty movie called Pokiri Raja, where he's basically a Malayali who lives in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
So that was how they made it justifiable for him to be a mass hero.
Yeah.
The fact that he's born and brought up in Tamil Nadu and is a gangster there. So you can play like Mammootty can play it like a Tamil hero could.
But they had to put his character there. Like, he had to be part of the...
Yeah, he's a guy who ran away from home or something like that, and he became a gangster in Madurai.
Yeah.
Madurai is where all the gangster movies come.
Yeah.
Like those really dark crime movies in Tamil, they're all from Madurai.
Yeah.
So he goes to Madurai, and that's how he comes back to Kerala, and then he makes an entry, and there's some 50 Scorpios with him or 50 Novas with him. That's how they played it like that. So
then does it annoy you when you say that, why compete? But it's clear that a lot of people within the Malayalam film industry are looking to do that, right? To try and compete. So is that a scary thought to you? Is that like, does it make you feel like, why try something which might not come naturally to you?
No, I mean, it does come naturally to us. I hope we get there in that route, because it's not like we haven't had like huge budget movies.
Yeah.
So there's this movie called Aadajeevitham, which Prithviraj is making. It's a really great director who's probably he's going to end up spending 15-16 years of his life making this one movie.
Yeah.
and it's shot in Jordan. It's about an immigrant's life there, and it's supposed to have a lot of amazing CG work. It's A.R. Rahman's big Malayalam movie. I mean, he just did a Fahad Fasil movie, but it's going to be another huge A.R. Rahman, score for this movie. So. And eventually, it's the story of a poor immigrant who goes to the Middle East and his struggles. That's a Malayalam movie.